She was just a waitress, invisible, unnoticed, surviving on scraps of life. Until one note, one small, desperate warning, changed everything. Suddenly, the most dangerous men in the city knew her name, and her life became the price of a war she never asked for. This is the story of Eva Serrano, the girl who chose to stop running, to step into the shadows and become a player no one could ignore. Let's begin. The cold inside the mariner's hearth didn't come from the air conditioning. It came from the kind of people who dined there, men and women wrapped in wealth like fur coats, dripping contempt with every gesture. Eva Serrano had grown used to the chill. 11-hour shifts had drained her capacity to feel anything warmer than exhaustion. Still, she kept her face composed. Customers loved servers who looked alive even when they weren't. The chandeliers above her were so bright they hurt her eyes, but the back-of-house workers always said the same thing. If the customers can see the gold plates sparkle, they don't notice the cracks in the walls. Eva understood cracks. Her life was held together by them. Cracked paychecks, cracked sleep, cracked hope. Nothing about her glowed, but she noticed everything. Most servers learned how to smile. Eva learned how to see. The shift had barely started and she'd already cataloged the new diamond ring on table 8, the businessman who kept wiping his forehead despite the room's cool temperature, and the couple arguing silently, lips tight, hands trembling. Then he walked in. Dominic Vale. He didn't enter the restaurant, he reshaped it. Conversation softened, laughter died, silverware paused mid-air. The room didn't freeze, it bowed. Eva didn't know his backstory, but she knew power when she saw it, and Dominic carried it like a shadow stitched to his spine. He always came with the same man, Rico Bianchi, broad shoulders, weathered face, eyes that never rested, a man carved from suspicion. Dominic, on the other hand, was sculpted from silence. He spoke with a neutrality that didn't fit human beings. No annoyance, no warmth, not even boredom, just stillness. Stillness so deep it felt like watching an ocean hold its breath. Those were the men Eva served. She hated how people whispered theories about Dominic, Mafia, syndicate, shadow family, but none of them knew. The only one paying real attention was Eva, because when you spend your life being invisible, you learn to observe the people the world treats like gods. She approached their table with her notebook. "Good evening, Mr. Vale." He nodded once, precisely once, as if acknowledging gravity rather than a human being. Rico barely blinked. Eva listed the specials. Dominic listened with unsettling attentiveness. Rico listened with impatience disguised as discipline. But tonight something was different. Tonight, the air moved wrong. Rico kept tapping his thumb against his thigh, not loudly, not nervously, but rhythmically, like a man measuring time, not wading through it. Eva had seen men wait, boyfriends waiting for their dates, executives waiting for meetings, drunks waiting for last call. But she'd never seen a man wait like Rico waited now, as if counting down. He checked his watch. Once, twice, 8 times within 5 minutes. Eva continued serving tables, but her eyes kept dragging back to them. When she was delivering wine to table 3, Rico abruptly stood up. Not for the restroom, not for a call. He simply left, fast, purposeful, scanning corners as if the walls themselves might jump him. Eva saw it. Dominic saw her seeing it. His gaze clipped hers for a second, just long enough to say, "You're aware. Interesting." Rico returned moments later, seating himself stiffly. His jaw was tight, a vein pulsing in his temple. Then she saw it. A small silver envelope half-tucked beneath the cuff of Rico's sleeve. Not from Dominic, not from the restaurant, hand-delivered by someone outside. Eva's stomach tightened. Her instincts, honed through years of surviving wage poverty, bad neighborhoods, and worse boyfriends, screamed one message: something bad is coming. She watched Rico slide the envelope deeper into his coat. His eyes darted toward the back exit, toward the kitchen. toward Dominic. No, this wasn't anxiety. This was orchestration. Eva wasn't a hero. She wasn't brave. She was tired. But tired people sometimes make decisions that change everything. As she passed her reflection in the wine cabinet glass, she caught sight of her own face, dark circles carved under weary eyes, hair tied back too tightly, mouth a tight line of fatigue. A ghost serving kings. And ghosts, she realized, are perfect witnesses. The anxiety in her chest sharpened to fear. A cold sweat formed along her spine. Her pulse throbbed in her wrists. She remembered her cousin warning her once. If you see something in this city that looks wrong, you didn't see anything. She could walk away. She should walk away, but she didn't. Instead, she approached Dominic's table with the bill folder in her hand. Rico wasn't looking. Dominic was scanning the dessert menu he never actually ordered from. Eva took a breath so deep it hurt and slipped a folded note under the receipt. Her handwriting was small, rushed, terrified. Your bodyguard took an envelope from a stranger. Don't use the back exit. Someone is waiting. She snapped the folder shut before her courage dissolved into nothing. Dominic reached for it. For a heartbeat, Eva was certain she had just ruined her career, or signed her death warrant, or both. He opened the folder, read the note, and something shifted in his expression. Not shock, not fear, but recognition. He lifted his eyes, meeting hers. For the first time since she'd known him, Dominic Vale's face wasn't blank. It carried the faintest, almost imperceptible crack of interest, curiosity, edged with something sharper. He closed the folder with surgical calm. "Rico," he murmured, "I believe I left my coat in the car. Retrieve it." Rico hesitated, barely, but it was enough. Dominic never hesitated. Rico stood, leaving through the main entrance. Dominic waited 3 seconds, stood, buttoned his jacket, then walked, slowly, smoothly, toward the kitchen. Eva's breath hitched. He wasn't using the front exit. He wasn't using the back exit. He was using the kitchen's freight elevator. He had understood the warning instantly. As he passed her, he didn't touch her, didn't speak to her, didn't even nod. But he looked at her. A single piercing look that said, "You just changed the game." He disappeared through the kitchen doors at the exact moment 2 strangers, men Eva had never seen, took position near the back exit. One posed as a server, carrying an empty tray. The other as a maintenance worker. Their eyes tracked every shadow. Then Rico returned to the dining area, alone, furious, scanning for Dominic. He realized too late that his plan had failed. Eva forced herself to walk calmly to the host stand. Her hands trembled so violently, she tucked them behind the counter. Her mind raced with one thought. What have I done? Rico's eyes swept the restaurant. They landed on her and narrowed. He took one step toward her, then another. Eva's throat closed. He kept walking. Closer, closer, closer. Her pulse roared in her ears. Her feet refused to move. Rico's shadow stretched across her shoes. When he opened his mouth, she braced for a threat. A loud crash erupted in the kitchen. Rico spun toward the sound. Eva's knees nearly gave out with relief. He barked something at a busboy and stormed toward the kitchen, shoving the doors open so hard they slammed against the walls. Eva stood frozen, heart pounding, vision blurring at the edges. She had interfered in something far bigger than she understood. She had betrayed a traitor. She had helped a Mafia king escape an execution. And now Rico knew something was wrong. The restaurant buzzed with renewed noise, but Eva felt utterly alone in a room full of people. Invisible once more, except to the one man she should have stayed invisible to. She backed into the service hallway, her breath shaking out of her chest. The cold metal of a fire extinguisher cabinet pressed against her spine. A whisper rose behind her, soft, male, close enough that she felt the warmth of breath on her ear. "You shouldn't have interfered." Eva jerked around and saw no one, just shadows. But the whisper had been real. and it wasn't Rico's voice. Eva backed into the dim service hallway, her pulse pounding so loud it felt like someone beating on the inside of her ribs. The noise of the dining room faded behind her, muffled, distant, unreal. Then a voice slipped into the darkness behind her, low, male. Close enough that she felt the breath brush the back of her neck. "You shouldn't have interfered." She spun around, and there was no one. Only shadows, only silence, only the icy realization that someone she had never seen already knew her name, her choice, and her mistake. Eva's blood turned cold, because if that voice wasn't Rico's, it meant someone else had been watching her all night, someone who knew exactly what she'd done, someone who wasn't supposed to exist, someone who had followed her into the dark. Eva had written things in her life before, grocery lists, rent pleas, resignation drafts she never sent, but nothing she had ever written felt as heavy as the 13 words she slid under Dominic Vale's bill. Your bodyguard took an envelope from a stranger. No back exit. Someone's waiting. Her heartbeat kicked against her ribs like it was trying to break free. She kept her posture straight, fake calm across her face, but her insides felt like thin glass. She watched Dominic out of the corner of her eye. He lifted the bill holder with deliberate, almost mechanical elegance. He opened it. His eyes moved once across her handwriting, and everything in him, every muscle, every breath, stilled. Not in confusion, not in disbelief, but in recognition. Dominic Vale had been expecting danger. He just hadn't known from which direction it would come. Eva saw it, even from several feet away, the flicker of something sharp behind his normally expressionless eyes. Not panic, not anger, calculations. Dominoes rearranging themselves in real time. Dominic closed the folder, quietly, precisely, as if sealing a verdict. He did not look at Rico. He did not glance toward the alley. He looked at her. The look wasn't gratitude. It wasn't alarm. It was something far colder, a ruler watching a citizen step over a line no one usually dared cross. Eva swallowed hard. She didn't look away. Dominic stood, smoothing his jacket without hurry. "Rico," he said lightly, "I left my coat in the car. Bring it." Rico blinked. "But sir, you—" "Now." Dominic's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Rico left the dining floor with the tension of a coiled spring, forced into obedience. The moment the doors didn't swing back fully, Dominic turned, not toward the front entrance, not toward the alley, but toward the kitchen. Eva's breath hitched. He had understood everything, and he was moving before the trap realized it had been exposed. Dominic cut through the kitchen like a ghost, slipping behind chefs and prep tables, headed for the one place no one ever used, the hurricane-proof freight elevator sealed behind a metal door, scarred with age. Eva followed at a distance, hiding behind racks of plates. Her hands trembled so hard she had to press them into her apron to keep the rattling quiet. Through the thin crack in the swinging kitchen door, she saw Dominic disappear into the elevator. The heavy steel door slid shut. 2 seconds later, 2 men entered the alley behind the restaurant. One wore a server's uniform. The other wore a city maintenance jacket. Their movements were synchronized, professional. Both drew guns. Eva's throat constricted. They weren't improvising. They weren't guessing. They had expected Dominic to walk into their line of fire like clockwork, but he wasn't there. The fake server cursed under his breath, his eyes scanning the shadows. He whispered something Eva couldn't hear, but the tension in his jaw said everything. The ambush had failed. The trap was broken, and Eva had broken it. She stepped back, too quickly. Her elbow clipped a stack of metal trays. The clang cut through the room like a bullet, sharp and impossible to ignore. Rico burst into the kitchen from the dining area, breath ragged, panic flickering openly across his face for the first time since she'd known him. He looked nothing like the unshakable shadow Dominic kept at his side. He looked like a man whose world had just collapsed. His eyes swept the kitchen. He saw movement. Eva froze. Rico's stare locked onto her, not fully, but close. His gaze narrowed, suspicion sparking like a blade catching light. One more second and he would have marched toward her, but a voice slipped into the space between them like ice sliding over glass. "Rico." Lena Arkwright stepped between the stainless steel counters as if she'd materialized out of the steam. Her posture was relaxed, hands loosely clasped behind her back. Her smile was thin enough to cut. "You're in the wrong doorway." Rico stiffened. "Where is he?" "Not where you wanted him to be." Her tone was silk, layered over steel. "Interesting, isn't it?" The tension in the kitchen tightened like a wire drawn too far. Rico glared at her, a muscle in his jaw twitching. "Move." "No," Lena said simply, and the dangerous, impossible thing was, he listened. Rico turned, storming toward the back exit, slamming into the alley where his accomplices were already scrambling. Lena waited until the sound of his footsteps faded. Then she looked directly at Eva, not with kindness, not with curiosity, with quiet acknowledgement. "You did more than you understand tonight," Lena murmured, "and it's going to cost you." Before Eva could speak, Lena walked away, disappearing into the shadows of the kitchen like a warning disguised as a woman. Eva stood trembling, the metal counters cold against her spine. Her pulse hammered in her throat, sweat gathered behind her knees. She had interfered, and now every hidden rule in Dominic Vale's world was shifting around her. When she finally mustered the courage to leave the restaurant, her body felt weightless, like shock had unplugged her from gravity. The night air was frigid. Each breath felt thin and sharp. Her footsteps echoed on the sidewalk, too loud, too vulnerable. She pulled her coat tight. Halfway home, she noticed the pattern of sound behind her. Footsteps, soft, measured, following. She walked faster. They matched her speed. Her heart pounded, fear spiking through her limbs. She turned onto a side street, half running now. The lamps flickered. The wind pressed against her ears. The footsteps behind her sped up and then stopped. Eva froze, breath caught in her chest. Silence. Then a voice slid right up against her ear, low, male. Too close. "You shouldn't have interfered." Her blood iced. She whipped around. No one was there, only shadows stretching across the pavement, and the sickening realization that whoever spoke had been close enough to whisper, yet fast enough to disappear. Eva woke to the hum of recycled air, the kind that never breathed in sunlight or city noise. Her eyelids felt heavy, her body stiff, as if she'd been poured into someone else's skin. When she sat up, the mattress didn't creak. Nothing in the room made noise. Not the lights, not the vents, not even her own heartbeat, which seemed to slow out of instinctive fear. The room was small, windowless, and carved out of concrete. No clock, no phone, no way to tell if it was morning or night. The cold metal door opposite her looked like it belonged in a bunker. She wasn't dead, but she wasn't free. A single figure waited in the corner, legs crossed, posture perfect, gaze unreadably calm. Lena Arkwright. Her platinum hair was tied into a sleek knot, her black suit immaculate despite the violence of the night. She didn't greet Eva or offer comfort. Lena simply watched her, like someone observing a fault line deciding whether to break. "You're awake," Lena finally said, voice cool enough to frost steel. "Good. He'll want to speak to you." "He?" Eva whispered, throat painfully dry. Lena didn't answer with words. She stood and opened the door. Dominic Vale entered. The room shifted around him. No. The air shifted around him. Eva felt the temperature drop, as if the man carried winter in his coat. His presence wasn't loud or explosive. It was the opposite, a gravitational silence that made the world feel narrower, sharper, controlled. He didn't look tired. He didn't look surprised. He didn't even look angry. He looked like a man who had already calculated the cost of something unspeakable, then paid it. Dominic stopped across from her, not looming, not softening, simply present. "Eva," he said, her name cutting through the room like a blade, "you saved my life." Her breath caught. The sentence felt too large, too heavy. It didn't feel like praise. It felt like a verdict. I just wrote a note," she managed. "No," Dominic replied. "You read a situation correctly when most people would have dismissed it. You chose to act when hesitation would have killed me." He tilted his head slightly. "And you did it knowing the consequence could have been your own death." There was no warmth in his tone, but there was something else. Something colder, more dangerous. Respect. Lena stood aside, arms folded, observing them both like this was a negotiation between worlds. Dominic continued, "Rico has been dealt with." Eva swallowed hard. Dealt with. Not fired, not reprimanded, eliminated. The realization washed over her like ice. Rico hadn't been acting alone. He wouldn't have dared. And if Dominic had been the target, then last night wasn't just betrayal. It was a coup. "The envelope," Dominic said, watching her reaction carefully, "contained a contract on me, signed by a faction that believed they could remove me without causing a war." Eva's pulse shot upward. The air tightened around her throat. Dominic wasn't speaking metaphorically. This wasn't a figure of speech. Someone in his own organization had ordered his death, a death she had unknowingly prevented. "And now," Dominic added quietly, "you find yourself in an unfortunate position." "What position?" she whispered. "You saw Rico accept payment. You witnessed the trap. You acted against a faction that would rather keep its secrets buried, which means—" He paused, as if choosing his phrasing with surgical precision. "You were never meant to leave that restaurant alive." A tremor ran through her entire body. Lena's expression didn't change, but her eyes flicked briefly toward Eva with a kind of clinical sympathy, an awareness of how close she had come to dying without even realizing it. Eva pressed her palms together to stop them from shaking. "So what happens now?" Dominic stepped closer, not threatening, simply inevitable. "That depends on you." The room seemed to inhale. "You can return to your old life," he said. "I'll ensure you are protected, quietly, discreetly. You'll be able to work, to live, to pretend none of this happened." Eva felt something twist in her chest. Going back meant slipping into the same invisibility she'd always lived in, a life where no one looked at her long enough to remember her name. Dominic continued, "Or," his voice dropped lower, "you can step into a different world entirely. Mine." Lena opened a black velvet box, revealing a pendant, an obsidian shard carved into a sharp, angular symbol. Its surface seemed to swallow the light. "This," Dominic said, "is the veil mark. It places you under my personal protection. If you wear it, no one touches you, no one questions you, no one dismisses you." Eva stared at the pendant, her breath trembling. She had spent her whole life unnoticed, background noise, the kind of person people spoke over, walked past, forgot in seconds. She'd lived in the cracks of the city, making no impact on anything or anyone. And now, Dominic Vale was offering her a place in his shadow. Not safety, not comfort, relevance, purpose, danger. "Choose," Dominic said softly. Eva's fingers hovered over the pendant. She didn't think. She didn't rationalize. She simply felt the weight of her years slipping through life like fog, felt the truth that invisibility had never been safety. It had been suffocation. She clasped the pendant in her palm. "I choose this," she whispered. Dominic nodded once, like he had been expecting it. Lena fastened the cord around Eva's neck with steady hands. The obsidian rested against her chest, cold, heavy, final. The moment it touched her skin, something inside her shifted, as if the city itself suddenly tilted toward her. Dominic didn't smile. He simply watched, studying the effect of his choice, of her choice on the room itself. "Then your old life ends here," he he said. Eva didn't argue, because she felt it too. Lena opened the door, motioning that Eva could leave. Her legs were unsteady, but she forced them to move. The hallway outside was narrow but brighter, leading toward a metal staircase that spiraled up into an unseen exit. Eva climbed. Each step felt heavier. Each breath felt louder. When she pushed the final door open, she emerged into sharp daylight, a back entrance of a building she didn't recognize, somewhere on the edge of the city. 2 police officers stood nearby, speaking quietly. Their badges glinted under the pale sun. As Eva stepped forward, the pendant slipped into view. Both officers froze. Their conversation died mid-sentence. Their backs straightened. Their eyes flicked to the obsidian emblem and widened, not with confusion, with caution. The older officer lowered his gaze completely, head bowing in a gesture she'd only ever seen directed at Dominic himself. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "apologies. We didn't realize you were veil-marked." The younger officer swallowed hard and stepped out of her path, almost stumbling in haste. Eva's lungs tightened. They weren't afraid of her. They were afraid of who owned her shadow. Her life was no longer hers. Behind her, in the doorway she had just stepped through, someone exhaled, a soft, deliberate sound. Not Dominic, not Lena. A man she hadn't seen before, wearing a gray suit and an unreadable expression. "The pendant changes everything, Eva," he murmured, "but it also paints a target you're not ready for." Eva turned, heart pounding, but the man was already gone. Fade to black. The first time Eva Serrano met Silas Ward, she realized the truth. She was going to die in his hands before he rebuilt her, not in the literal sense, not immediately. But the first day she stepped onto the training floor, the concrete smelled of sweat and iron, and the smell alone made her stomach twist. Silas was a shadow of muscle and discipline, his eyes cold and patient, watching her every movement as though he could measure her soul with the angle of her shoulder. He didn't speak at first. He only moved, and every motion was punishment. Every instruction a test she couldn't fail without consequence. "Move like your life depends on it," he said on the 3rd hour of the first day, "because one day it will." And he wasn't exaggerating. The regimen was 6 weeks of brutality so raw that Eva didn't recognize her own body. Pre-dawn fights in the gray chill before sunrise left bruises blooming along her arms and ribs. Silas didn't stop when she fell. He counted every breath, every second, every hesitation, and punished the slightest falter. Blindfolded, she learned the delicate anatomy of weapons, assembly and disassembly, all by touch alone. Each misstep elicited a sharp strike to her hands or a controlled push to the floor. She screamed sometimes in ways no one ever heard. Then came the psychological endurance, silence marathons that stretched her mind thin, isolation periods where the walls themselves seemed to whisper doubts, fears and threats she hadn't known she carried. Fear conditioning drills were the worst. Flashing lights, sudden loud noises, unpredictable movements designed to teach her the reflexes of a predator. Every drop of blood, every scrape, every scream remained unseen, private, personal, necessary. She cried alone in the showers afterward. She bled into her uniform in private. She broke herself in ways only Silas could measure. And yet every time she staggered, every time her hands shook, she found herself standing again. Not strong, not yet, but present. Dominic never appeared on the training floor. He didn't watch. He didn't observe her sweat or tremble or lash out in frustration. And yet every night Lena submitted reports on Eva's performance, her progress, her mistakes, her resilience. Eva began to suspect that Dominic was aware of everything, every drop of pain she endured, every microsecond of triumph, every thought she didn't dare speak. Silas noticed the change, too. "You're learning faster than most," he said one day, his voice a growl that matched the low hum of fluorescent lights. It's not your fists, not your endurance, it's your mind. You see patterns, weaknesses, opportunities before they exist. That's rare. That's dangerous. Eva nodded, though she didn't know if he was complimenting her or warning her. Probably both. The training consumed her. It didn't allow for personal time, for tears that could heal her, for thoughts that wandered to an old apartment or old life. She became a creature of discipline and pain, her body and mind reshaped by the steady, relentless hand of Silas. Days blurred into nights. Numbness became a companion. Exhaustion became a friend. The mirror in the training hall became a stranger. She looked at herself one evening and didn't recognize the girl who had served coffee and carried trays. Bruises and muscle, alert eyes and tense hands. She saw someone ready for war, someone awake in a world that never let her breathe. On the 39th day, Silas introduced a new drill. "Tonight," he said, "you fight without knowing the threat. You will respond. You will survive. And you will remember every detail." Eva's pulse quickened. She understood the implications. It wasn't about fighting humans. It was about survival in unpredictability. Her mind raced through every scenario, every move, every strategy Silas had forced into her muscle memory over weeks of pain. She moved into the center of the compound, shadowed by the bare lights overhead. The walls, steel reinforced and silent, seemed to close around her. Every sound echoed. Every breath was measured. Her senses sharpened to the point she could hear her heartbeat against the concrete. Then the sound came. Not a signal, not a warning, not a part of the drill. A door, forced. A footstep that didn't match any drill. A shadow that didn't belong. A man in a mask appeared at the far end of the hall. Eva froze for an instant, disbelief flashing in her mind. This wasn't part of the program. Silas had not prepared her for this. The man raised a gun. Eva's body reacted before her mind could. She dove to the side, rolling as the first shot tore through the space she had occupied a fraction of a second before. The sound of gunfire exploded inside the small compound, echoing off the metal walls like thunder in a storm. She scrambled behind cover, hands shaking, chest heaving, her body alive with terror and adrenaline. Her mind, sharpened over weeks of training, raced. She noticed every detail, the position of the intruder, the angle of the gun, the sound of his breathing. Silas emerged from the shadows like a predator himself, silent, deadly, and calm. "Move, Serrano," he barked. Eva obeyed instinctively, every movement honed by 6 weeks of pain, fear, and discipline. She fired back when she could, not aiming to kill yet, just to survive. Each shot was precise, learned, controlled, the culmination of every exercise they had endured. The masked man advanced relentlessly, confidence growing as he realized she wasn't alone. Eva ducked behind a support column, her mind spinning, her body screaming for rest it could not have. Another shot rang out. Sparks flew where the bullet met metal. Eva felt the shockwave in her chest, her vision blurred for a heartbeat. She realized something vital. This wasn't training. This wasn't Silas testing her. Someone had breached the compound. Someone had come for her. Her pulse raced. Her breath came in sharp, ragged bursts. Every muscle screamed with fatigue. Every bruise and scar a reminder of how far she'd been pushed. The intruder's eyes, visible through the mask, were cold, calculating, certain. Eva felt a strange clarity. Weeks of fear, pain, and discipline had prepared her for this moment. She would not die here, not without making him pay. Silas threw himself into the intruder's path, moving with silent efficiency. The masked man's gun fired again, a deafening crack that made the concrete shake. Eva's hand found her weapon, heart hammering as she lunged from cover. The gun went off again. Sparks, metal, the smell of gunpowder and fear. The room was chaos. Shouts, ricochets, the sound of her own heartbeat thrumming in her ears. She caught a glimpse of the intruder staggering from a hit. Silas landed. His hand twitched on the trigger. Eva's body screamed with adrenaline, terror, and exhilaration. Her mind raced ahead of him, calculating, predicting, surviving. She realized, even in this chaos, she had been reborn. Every cry, every bruise, every moment of despair had led to this instant. And then, the last flash of movement before a deafening crack split the air. Her world tilted. The bullet didn't hit her. It hit something else. But she saw the intruder's smirk, and she knew, with a sudden icy clarity, that this attack wasn't random. It was only the beginning. The gunshot echoed like a drumbeat through the stark, steel-reinforced training hall. Eva's body jerked backward instinctively, muscles coiled like spring steel, heart hammering in her chest. The masked intruder crumpled to the floor, the scent of gunpowder thick in the air. His body landed inches from her, and she had to step back to avoid touching it. Blood pooled quietly on the concrete, stark against the pale, fluorescent light. Silas Ward didn't glance at her. He stood over the intruder, breathing slow and controlled, eyes hard, unyielding. "Lesson," he said quietly, voice clipped. "They'll come at you fast. They'll come with intent to kill. Don't hesitate." Eva didn't speak. Her lips were pressed tight. Her body shook, not from fear, but from the adrenaline that refused to leave. She realized with a pulse-jarring clarity that this wasn't training. This wasn't a test Silas had orchestrated. This was something else, something personal. She looked down at the intruder's mask, still in place, concealing identity. There was no signature, no calling card, only a message. The implication was unmistakable. Someone within Dominic Vale's empire wanted her to know how close death could come, even under protection. Eva swallowed hard. The cold reality settled in her bones. "This isn't just a warning," she muttered under her breath, her fingers trembling on the grip of her sidearm. "It's a threat. Direct, personal, internal." Silas didn't answer. He cleaned his weapon silently, methodical, expression unreadable. His eyes flicked to Eva, a single acknowledgement that this trial was hers to internalize. The silence stretched between them, a taut wire of tension. Eva's chest rose and fell rapidly. She wanted to flee, to scream, to break down, and yet she didn't. She hardened. She stepped closer to the intruder's body, eyes scanning for clues, details, anything left behind. Nothing. The man had vanished from existence with the precision of someone trained as meticulously as Silas himself. Eva clenched her fists. "I'm not quitting," she said, voice low but steady, carrying through the quiet hall like a declaration. "If this is meant to scare me off, it won't." Silas looked at her. For the first time, she thought she saw something like respect in his cold, calculating eyes. Then he turned and disappeared through the shadows, leaving her alone with the body and the echoing warning. By nightfall, Eva found herself across from Dominic Vale in his office. The walls were lined with books he never read, the room lit by muted amber from city lights seeping through heavy curtains. He didn't rise to greet her. He never did. But the weight in the air pressed down on her chest. "I need the truth," Eva said, voice firm but low. "Who was that? Why am I here? Why did this happen?" Dominic regarded her carefully, his hands folded on the desk. For the first time, his usual composure faltered. A tiny crack appeared at the edge of his otherwise unshakable calm. "The coup," he began slowly, voice low, almost cracking under the strain of emotion he rarely allowed himself to show, "wasn't just against me." Eva felt the words hit her like ice. "Not just you?" "No," he said, the edge of his usual steel gone. "It was against anyone I ever trusted. Friends, allies, even innocents who mattered to me." Eva swallowed hard. She hadn't realized before, hadn't even considered that his empire was built on silence, fear, and loyalty. And that loyalty had its price. Dominic's eyes darkened, a storm barely contained beneath calm waters. For a brief, disarming moment, she saw vulnerability there, the kind she had never seen before. The man who commanded empires, who wielded fear like a weapon, who had orchestrated life and death with precision, was human, fragile, weighted down by the cost of power he bore alone. She realized then that her decision to accept the pendant wasn't just about protection. It was about stepping into a world that demanded vigilance at every heartbeat, every shadow, every breath. Eva leaned forward, voice steady but urgent. "Then I'm not leaving. I'm not hiding. If you trust me enough to wear the pendant, then I'm here, all the way." Dominic studied her, expression unreadable. Then he nodded, almost imperceptibly. A sudden vibration on his desk startled both of them. Dominic didn't reach for it immediately. Instead, he looked at Eva with an intensity that froze her blood. His eyes narrowed. He lifted a small, encrypted device and activated it. The screen lit up with a message, blinking in stark red letters. "The price has been set." Dominic's lips pressed together, and for the first time in Eva's life, she saw fear ripple across his face. Not panic, not hesitation. Fear, pure, visceral, human fear. He turned toward her, eyes sharp but unguarded. "Eva?" His voice was almost a whisper, trembling at the edges. "This isn't about survival anymore. This is about payment. Someone knows. Someone is coming. And the cost..." He stopped, swallowed hard, and looked away for a heartbeat. When he returned his gaze to her, it was heavier than any command, any weight she had ever felt. Eva felt the pendant against her chest. It was heavier than ever, not a symbol of protection, but of responsibility, of consequence, of danger that now touched her life in ways she couldn't escape. Outside the window, the city shimmered, oblivious to the storm already breaking within its shadows. And in the silence that followed the message, Eva knew, without a shred of doubt, the first strike had been only the beginning. Dominic's fear, the coded message, and the sense of impending danger leave readers desperate to see what comes next. The gala began before Eva even reached the grand entrance. From the taxi window, she saw the city glitter like fire on glass, lights reflected in the puddles of melted ice along the streets, the wind carrying the distant hum of traffic. But she didn't see the glamour or the spectacle. She saw opportunity, danger, power disguised in silk and perfume. The limousine stopped, and she stepped onto the cobblestone path leading to the historic manor hosting the event. The obsidian pendant rested against her chest, heavy and cold, yet alive with the weight of Dominic's presence. She felt it immediately, the subtle shift in the air around her. Heads turned, whispers cut through the chatter, eyes lingered where they shouldn't. She wasn't invisible anymore, not in the way that had defined her life for 27 years. She was seen. Not just seen, but analyzed, measured, and acknowledged as someone significant, someone untouchable. Dominic stayed at her side, but not in the way a bodyguard might. He didn't hover. He didn't clasp her arm. He moved like a shadow, perfectly aligned, watchful, confident. Pride, subtle but unmistakable, traced the lines of his posture. He knew what she had become, and he knew others were noticing too. The room was a tableau of power, men in tuxedos that cost more than some apartments, women in gowns that could blind with their sparkle. Masks of civility and elegance barely concealed the teeth beneath, the predators mingling among the glittering crowd. Eva's training had prepared her body and mind for combat, for survival, for raw violence. But tonight, the battlefield was whispers, glances, and the unspoken threat of betrayal. Her eyes scanned continuously. Micro-expressions, minor gestures, almost imperceptible shifts in posture. Every movement in the room was data, every conversation a potential threat vector. A man in a tailored black suit brushed past Dominic, his hand grazing the small of his back. The touch seemed casual, accidental, but Eva noticed the coded finger tap against the man's cuff, a signal. Someone else's hand somewhere in the room mirrored it. She leaned toward Dominic, whispering into his ear, her voice soft but urgent. 2 o'clock balcony. Sniper, not subtle. Dominic's jaw tightened, but his composure never faltered. He simply adjusted his stance, eyes flicking to the potential danger she had already neutralized in observation. A single hand gesture, a silent acknowledgement, and the sniper disappeared before a bullet ever had a chance to fly. Eva's heart pounded, not from fear, but exhilaration. Every cell in her body knew she had found her place in Dominic's world. She could see the predators, predict their moves, counter them before they even realized she was aware. Her mind was a weapon, her perception sharpened to the edge of inevitability. They moved deeper into the crowd. Champagne glasses sparkled under crystal chandeliers. Conversations flowed like blood in the veins of the room, elegant and dangerous. Every whispered secret carried the weight of alliances and threats. Eva caught one, a name, a location, a time, and passed it quietly to Dominic. He didn't look at her the way one looks at an apprentice. He looked at her the way someone realizes a new force has entered the world. He saw not a girl who had once poured drinks, but a predator in human form, poised with lethal elegance. Hours passed in this tense dance. Drinks were offered, smiles exchanged, hands shaken. But the real transactions were invisible. Contracts signed with eyes, loyalties shifted with subtle nods, threats encoded in laughter. Eva's every observation kept Dominic one step ahead of danger. She intercepted glances that would have spelled the end for him. She noticed hands that didn't belong on champagne flutes, but on concealed weapons. And then, a flash. A dropped phone on the floor near a man she had been tracking. He didn't notice. The moment was brief, almost imperceptible. Eva's instincts screamed. She moved silently, eyes scanning the screen. Her heart froze. Rico's face stared back at her, alive. The photograph showed him grinning, holding what looked like a silenced pistol in a dimly lit room. The screen changed, showing his next location, a rooftop directly overlooking the manor. Dominic. Her pulse hammered, sweat prickling her skin beneath the elegant gown she wore. Every scenario she had trained for flashed in her mind. There was no hesitation. Rico was alive. Rico was coming, and he was coming for Dominic. She leaned toward Dominic, whispering urgently, but the noise of the gala swallowed her words. He didn't hear her. She realized she had only seconds. She needed a plan. She needed to act. Every step, every motion mattered. Her eyes scanned the room again. Allies, enemies, shadows of threats she had never seen before. The city beyond the windows twinkled innocently, unaware of the predator moving across rooftops, unseen, waiting for the moment to strike. Eva felt the pendant against her chest, cold, heavy, a promise of power and peril. And then, from above, a subtle shift, a shadow moving against the ornate stone balcony. She froze, heart pounding, fingers tightening around her clutch. Rico, alive, armed, coming for Dominic. The music, the laughter, the polite toasts, all of it became background noise. Every second stretched. Every heartbeat thundered in her ears. Dominic turned, sensing the tension she hadn't yet voiced. His gaze locked on her. Eva's eyes never left the balcony. She whispered the words she had trained herself to say in moments of life and death. Rico's here. He's coming. Now. Dominic's expression shifted, calm, calculating. Then, something she had never seen before. Fear. The night air on the rooftop garden was sharp, scented with jasmine and cold city wind. The gala's distant hum of music and laughter seemed like another world far below, trivial and innocent. Eva's heart thumped as she scanned the terrace, every shadow a possible threat, every flicker of movement a warning. And then she saw him. Rico, alive, lean, precise, silent as a stalking cat. The moonlight caught the glint of metal at his hip, cold steel partially concealed beneath his tailored coat. His eyes found Dominic Vale before they found anyone else. Eva froze, every muscle coiled. She had trained for moments like this. She had endured 6 weeks of exhaustion, fear, pain, discipline, and now it all came down to seconds. Rico moved with the confidence of a predator that had been overlooked for too long. He didn't greet Dominic. He didn't demand attention. He simply stepped forward, the night folding around him, carrying a sense of inevitability. "Dominic," Rico said, voice smooth, calculated, "you've been walking blind." Dominic's eyes narrowed, the calm, controlled facade breaking slightly. "Rico," he said, low, cold, "I should have known you'd surface eventually." Rico smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You've been preparing for the wrong battle. You were never the target." Eva's stomach twisted. Her chest tightened. "What do you mean?" "You," Rico said, shifting his gaze to her. His smirk widened. "She's the price, the leverage. The reason your precious Dominic Vale was forced into negotiations he didn't know he agreed to. I'm here to collect what's owed." Time seemed to freeze. Eva's eyes went wide. The pendant burned against her chest, heavy and suffocating. The world narrowed to 3 people on this rooftop, the predator, the protector, and herself. Dominic's jaw clenched. Rage, real, unfiltered rage, something Eva had never seen. Not the controlled, quiet authority she had studied. This was fire, molten and raw. "You would touch her?" he growled, each word scraping against his teeth. "You would make her the pawn in your games?" Rico's laugh was a knife, slicing the tension. "She is the pawn, and you're the fool who thinks she's untouchable." Eva didn't wait. She didn't hesitate. Years of invisibility, 6 weeks of brutal training, every ounce of fear and pain coiled into reflex. She stepped between them, hand moving toward the small weapon she had hidden under her jacket. Rico lunged. Eva moved first, not instinctively, but with purpose. She blocked his strike, rolling aside to redirect the force, using his momentum against him. Every move was calculated, precise, born of weeks of relentless conditioning. Her heart hammered, but her mind was a steel trap. Rico spun, recovering faster than she expected. He swung again, the blade of his intent cutting through the air. Eva deflected it, twisting, ducking. Landing a strike to his side, pain didn't slow her, adrenaline sharpened her. Dominic lunged from behind, grabbing Rico's arm. Chaos erupted. Metal clashed. Bodies collided. The rooftop a storm of fury. Eva pushed, blocked, kicked, turned, all while keeping herself between Rico and Dominic, buying the crucial seconds he needed. Rico fought like a cornered animal, wild and lethal, every move chaotic yet terrifyingly effective. Eva's breaths came in rapid, sharp bursts, muscles screaming, mind running 1,000 calculations per heartbeat. Then, with a final coordinated strike, Dominic disarmed Rico, sending the gun skidding across the rooftop, clanging against the stone edge. Rico stumbled backward, bleeding, rage and shock coiling together in his features. Dominic didn't raise his weapon. He didn't deliver the fatal blow. Eva did. She stepped forward, chest heaving. Her hands shook, but her voice was steady. "I won't become what he is," she said, eyes locked on Rico. "I won't take the life that defines me by his cruelty. That's not the woman I am." Dominic's eyes softened, almost imperceptibly, though the fury never fully left them. He regarded her, and for a heartbeat she understood the weight of what she had done, not only saved him, but preserved herself. Rico crawled to a sitting position, chest heaving, blood dark against the pale stone. His lips curved into a wicked, knowing smile. "You think you saved him?" he whispered, voice ragged, venom laced in each syllable. "You think this ends tonight?" Eva's stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" Rico laughed, low and chilling. "You've just started a war." He tilted his head, eyes burning with cruel anticipation. And then, before either Eva or Dominic could react, he vanished into the shadows of the rooftop gardens, slipping away like a ghost. The wind whispered against Eva's pendant. The city stretched below them, glittering and innocent, oblivious to the storm they had just ignited. Dominic's hands clenched into fists at his sides. He looked at Eva with a mixture of awe and concern, his calm authority shattered, replaced with something heavier, the weight of a war already set in motion. Eva swallowed, heart-hammering. The realization hit her full force. This battle was far from over. Rico was alive. He was free. And now, every decision, every move, every breath they took would be measured against the war he had promised. And in that moment, Eva understood the truth. She was no longer a spectator in Dominic Vale's world. She was a player. Rico's words, his escape, and the looming war set up Chapter 8 with maximum suspense and tension. The city stretched below like a living constellation, glittering in the crisp night air. Eva Serrano stood at the edge of the high-rise balcony, the obsidian pendant heavy and warm against her chest, as if the stone carried the pulse of the city itself. Wind tugged at her hair, sharp and relentless, and the scent of rain-damp streets mingled with concrete and neon. She wasn't afraid, not entirely, not anymore. Fear had become a tool she wielded rather than a chain she carried. Inside the safe house, Lena Arkwright moved with her usual precision, her voice calm, authoritative. "It's true," she said, confirming what Eva already suspected. "Rico wasn't lying. Your involvement has forced the hand of the rival faction. A clash is unavoidable." Eva's stomach twisted, but she drew in a breath. Her training, her choices, her pain, all of it had led to this moment. She felt the weight of consequence settle like iron in her chest. This wasn't about survival anymore. This was about power, influence, and the lines she had chosen to draw between herself and the world. Dominic Vale entered the room, eyes sharp, presence imposing as ever. But something was different. The fire she had seen in him during their confrontation with Rico was still there, but tempered now. Controlled, disciplined, like a blade forged in battle in careful hands. And now, for the first time, he looked at her. Not as someone he had saved, but as someone he could rely on, as an equal. He crossed the room, his gaze unwavering. "Eva," he said quietly, but the weight behind his words pressed against her chest. "You've proven yourself. Not just in training, not just on rooftops, but in judgment, observation, restraint. You're ready to step beyond the veil." Eva's pulse quickened. "Step into—" He extended a hand, a gesture uncharacteristically formal, yet full of intent. Not as an operative, not as a shield, but as a liaison. My bridge between the legitimate and the shadowed worlds. Someone who can navigate both with authority. Someone I trust with the truth, with influence, with power. Eva studied him. Every fiber of her being recognized the magnitude of what he offered. This was no protection, no pendant. This was acknowledgement, agency, authority. "I'll do it," she said, her voice steady, measured, "but on one condition." Dominic raised an eyebrow, silent, curious. "You never ask me to give up who I am," she said, her eyes locking with his. "Not my choices. Not my perspective, not the woman I've become. I will serve, but I will not vanish into someone else's shadow." For a long moment, Dominic said nothing. Then slowly, a smile, rare, almost human, spread across his face. Not triumphant, not indulgent, just acknowledgement, respect, recognition. "Agreed," he said finally. "Your terms are yours. Your path remains yours." The tension that had gripped her chest for weeks seemed to dissolve slightly, replaced with a tempered exhilaration. She had chosen her path, forged it in fire and blood, observation and endurance. Now, for the first time, she could walk it openly, with purpose. Hours later, Eva returned to the balcony of the high-rise overlooking New Haven. The city sparkled beneath her, a grid of lights, movement, and invisible agendas. Below, The streets teemed with people oblivious to the silent wars waged above, unaware of the manipulations and power struggles unfolding behind closed doors. The obsidian pendant warmed against her skin, as if sensing her resolve. It was no longer merely a mark of protection. It was a symbol of agency, of authority, of choice. She could feel the pulse of the city in its cold surface, the weight of influence pressing against her heart. Her reflection shimmered faintly in the glass beside her. She saw the woman she had been, the invisible waitress, unnoticed, silent, ignored. That woman was gone. She felt the echoes of that past life, but no longer as chains, only as markers of how far she had come. Eva's mind flicked to Dominic, the wars she had survived, the lives she had touched and saved, every calculated step, every observation. Every moment of restraint had led to this. She was powerful, terrified, and alive in equal measure. The wind tugged at her hair again. She flexed her fingers, aware of her own heartbeat, her own agency, her own authority. She was not the monster others might want her to be. She was not a weapon forged only for vengeance. She was a player. The city sprawled below, unknowable yet within her grasp. Shadows danced along alleys and rooftops, secrets waiting to be revealed, alliances ready to fracture. Eva's eyes scanned the horizon, mind already mapping possibilities, probabilities, and strategies. A faint vibration in the pendant made her pause, a reminder that even in this triumph, vigilance was constant. She was no longer merely reacting. She was planning, orchestrating, anticipating. The glow of streetlights reflected off the glass walls of nearby towers, casting fractured patterns across her face. The thrill of potential danger, the sharp edge of fear, and the intoxicating taste of control flowed together like a river of fire. And in that moment, she felt it fully. The power of choice, the weight of survival, the exhilaration of agency. She could step into shadows or command the light. She could be quiet or be heard. She could act with restraint or unleash calculated force. Eva tilted her head slightly, letting the wind whip her hair back, eyes scanning the horizon. She was no longer just a player in someone else's game. She was the architect of her own. And yet, deep in her gut, a flicker of unease persisted. The world was never static. Rivals she hadn't yet identified, enemies still hidden in plain sight, threats lying dormant, all waiting for a misstep. From the far end of the balcony, a shadow detached itself from the darkness. Movement so subtle it might have been mistaken for the wind. But Eva felt it. The pendant against her chest pulsed almost imperceptibly. A figure stepped forward, masked, deliberate, silent. Familiar in some way, yet impossible to place. Eva's heart caught. Every training, every lesson, every experience screamed at her. This is only the beginning. She shifted into stance, body tense, mind alert. And then a voice, low, almost a whisper, carried on the wind, slicing through the night. "You think the game is over, Eva? You've only just made your move." She froze, eyes narrowing, muscles coiled like steel. The city below glittered innocently. But above, on the balcony, the true game was only beginning.